I'm about to do something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Hike Mount Whitney, the highest mountain in the continental US. This mountain is 14,500 feet high and is in the Sierra Nevada mountain range, south of Yosemite and west of Death Valley. Interestingly, it's only 135 miles from the lowest point in the United States, Badwater Basin in Death Valley. As the highest peak in the continental US, Whitney has been on my bucket list for quite some time. So when a friend of mine proposed that we actually try to hike it, I jumped at the chance. There's a couple of different ways you can hike to the top of Mount Whitney. Ideally, if you have enough time, you can do it as an overnight backpacking trip, stopping to camp over the course of 2 or more days. But I'm not really a backpacker. My aversion to hiking long distances and long hours is less than my aversion to carrying a heavy pack. So I'm gonna try to bag this peak in one day, and it's gonna be a doozy. As a day hike, Whitney is pretty challenging. It's 22 miles round trip with over 6,100 feet of elevation gain, and much of it is over 10,000 feet in elevation, so altitude sickness is a real concern. A lot of the blogs and resources you can read online recommend spending a few days in the area before your hike to sort of acclimate to the altitude, but my friend and I didn't have that luxury because of work schedules, so hopefully we'll be okay. I live in Vegas, which is only about 2,000 feet above sea level, but I spent a month in New Mexico and Colorado recently and camped above 10,000 feet many nights. Plus, I hiked a 13,000-foot mountain out there for practice, and I hiked Mount Charleston Peak a few times right outside Vegas, which is about 12,000 feet. And I didn't get altitude sickness on any of those hikes, so I'm hoping I'll be okay. Anyway, before I set out on the hike, there's a few things I should mention about logistics. First, you have to have a permit to hike Whitney. The Forest Service issues all the permits for the season on a certain date, which my friend and I missed because we hadn't decided we for sure wanted to do this yet. By the time we decided that it was something we really wanted to try, pretty much all the permits were gone. So I had to log into this sort of second chance sale they do about halfway through the season when they release all the permits people won in the first lottery but never claimed or paid for. I was lucky and was able to get 2 day hike permits for the window we wanted. We wanted to go in early to mid-September, before the winter snowstorms start rolling in, but with enough time after the Burning Man festival to recover. My friend also went to Burning Man. When hiking Mount Whitney, timing is important. If you go too early or too late in the season, you risk having to hike through snow and dealing with crampons and ice axes, which I prefer to avoid if possible. I'm no snow bunny. I'm from the desert. But if you go in the summertime, the trail will be more crowded and you run the risk of getting caught in a summer thunderstorm. And these thunderstorms are no joke. Over the years, several hikers have died either on the peak or on the trail from being struck by lightning. Yikes! After hiking through a terrifying lightning storm in Colorado a couple summers ago, I know that I never want to put myself through that torture again. So another good reason to go in the shoulder season is there's supposedly less chance of getting struck by lightning. We got our permits for September 19th, just a few days before the official end of summer. Anyway, because it's such a long hike, most people setting out to bag Whitney Peak in a day camp out at the trailhead the night before. That way, when you wake up at whatever ungodly hour you decide to begin at, you're right there at the base of the trail and don't have to waste any time driving. My friend and I are at Whitney Portal, a campground at the base of the Whitney Peak Trail. We plan to get a few hours of sleep and then get up at 2 a.m. to begin our ascent. At this time of year, we should have about 12 hours of daylight, but my friend wants to make sure we have plenty of daylight for the descent because he's anticipating being tired and much more in danger of slipping and rolling an ankle. By starting at 2 a.m., we'll spend the first few hours of the hike hiking by the light of our headlamps while we're still fresh, and then the sun should rise somewhere along the way to the top. From what I read online, depending on your fitness level, it should take anywhere between 5 to 10 hours to get to the top. I feel like I could probably get to the top in 6 hours, but I'm not quite 100%. I've had a cold ever since Burning Man, and I didn't really have time to rest and recover after Burning Man because I had to go on a 7-day road trip photo shoot with 5 other models and a photographer in an RV up and down the state of Nevada. And there really wasn't much time for R&R on that trip. Anyway, they say it generally takes a few hours less to do the descent. So even if it takes 8 hours to get to the top, that's around 13 hours altogether, which would get me back to my car in plenty of time for a celebratory burger and beer at one of the local watering holes. Anyway, here's what I'm carrying with me for the hike. I'm only taking a small day pack with a 2-liter water bladder inside. I know from experience that I don't tend to drink a lot of water on hikes like this, so 2 liters should be plenty, but in case I need more, I'm also bringing a water filter because there's supposed to be a lot of streams and lakes with water you can drink if you filter it first. Then I have my food, a couple Cliff Bars, some jerky, and about 2 pounds of trail mix. Probably around 10,000 calories worth, should be plenty to get me to the top and back. And of course, I have to carry my permit with me. Supposedly there will be rangers checking them on the trail, and you can get fined if you don't have your permit with you. Also, because we're setting out so early, I'm going to need a headlamp for the first few hours of the hike. Then I have a few random emergency supplies, including a space blanket, some waterproof matches, and some Band-Aids in case I get blisters, and my satellite phone in case I need to call for help. And the most important thing of all, an external battery pack for my cell phone so that I don't run out of juice before I finish making this video. I'm also carrying some toilet paper in case I have to pee, and another baggie to carry out my used toilet paper since there's no trash cans anywhere along the trail. And to that end, if you have to go number 2, they do not allow you to dig a cat hole anywhere in the Whitney zone, so you have to carry out all of your solid waste in what's called a wag bag. They are so serious about this that the rangers issue everyone a free wag bag with their permit. Anyway, my friend and I have set up camp here at Whitney Portal, and we're getting ready to turn in for the night, even though it's only 8 p.m. I'm sleeping in my car, and I brought a tent for my friend to sleep in, and our plan is to wake up at 2 a.m. and roll straight out. I already went ahead and made coffee. Because we're only sleeping for 4 hours, it should still be hot when I wake up, especially because I put it in this awesome Zoji Rushi thermos that is the most legit thermos I've ever owned. I'll put a link to it in the description if you're interested. Anyway, better get some sleep. Ugh. Oh, it's 2 a.m., Wednesday, September 19th. And my friend and I just woke up and are about to start our hike up Whitney Peak. It's freezing. Okay, it's probably only about in the 40s, but it's cold and it's pitch black and you're not gonna be able to see anything anyways. So in the interest of not falling off the trail, I'm probably not gonna shoot any video, at least until the sun comes up. So wish me luck until then. Okay, I know I said I wasn't going to shoot any video in the dark, but this is such a surreal experience that I just had to share this with you. I mean, you will never in a million years be able to see it, but if I tilt my camera up, there's 1,000,001 stars in the sky. I mean, if you look on a map, you'll see that Mount Whitney is in a pretty remote part of the country, so there's not hardly any light pollution. The stars are amazing. Also, weirdly and embarrassingly, I'm high as a kite. I ate a little bit of a pot cookie before I went to sleep last night, just a tiny bite, just enough to get me through the 4.5 hours I had to sleep. And apparently it didn't metabolize in time. And I guess with all the blood pumping exertion, after about the first 30 minutes of the hike, I started feeling really woozy. And I thought, oh no, altitude sickness. Well, no, I think it's just good old-fashioned marijuana. So I'm having this really amazing Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon experience, hiking along in the pitch black under 1,000,000 stars, high as a kite. Here comes my friend. Gotta go. Oh my God, I don't know if you guys can see this, but imagine trying to cross this in the dark. It's basically a series of logs that are flat on top that you have to walk across this river on. And then there's probably about 10 of them that I gotta not fall off of. Yikes. Oh man, this sure is gonna be beautiful in the daylight. Oh. Hooray! The sun is finally coming up, and holy cannoli, look at this view. It looks like a Maxfield Parrish painting. The light on those different jaggedy layers of rock, which by the way, I still have to climb all the way up to. Yikes. Oh, it's so amazing. I'm not usually up this early. It's very, very rare that I see a sunrise, and I don't think I've ever just sat and watched one the whole way through, so the hike should be a lot more interesting from here out. Wow, look at the light on the mountains there. Ah, man, it's changing every minute. Oh man, I feel like that double rainbow guy. When I saw that view for the first time, I said every cuss word I know. I'm not sure why that was my reaction, but it just really, words failed me, I guess. Holy wow. Look at this campground way up here in this meadow. You can actually backpack your gear up here. Oh, wow, what a place to wake up. You guys, this is like being in Alaska or some crazy remote place because relatively few people come up here. There's these amazing meadows, these super crystal clear streams and lakes. I mean, I feel like I'm in Lord of the Rings. I keep passing through these different environments, like the spooky dark woods and then the beautiful meadow, and soon I'll be coming upon the crags of doom. Oh, what a hike! Okay, if my altimeter app is to be believed, I'm about 13,000 feet. It's about 9:30 in the morning. Whew. This is tough. The air is thin up here at 13,000 feet. But overall, I feel pretty good. I'm just taking a lot of breaks when I need them. So I still have another 1,500 feet to go. But I feel like the end is sort of in sight because I'm way above the tree line. And I've reached this sketchy portion with cables strung along it to hang on to. I guess there's a pretty steep drop off. I'll show you guys this way. The light is really bright, so it's going to be kind of harsh, but it goes on and on for quite some way, and I think it gets pretty steep to the side. So I better stop shooting and just concentrate on the path. Oh man. I just talked to some other hikers, and they are tracking their progress on like one of those software apps, and they said we've gone about 8 miles, which means 3 more to go. I just checked my altimeter and I'm about 13,300. That means somewhere around 1,200 more feet of elevation gain, or 3 miles. And I think it's about 9:30 a.m., not even 10 yet. But it's a little bit monotonous, the trail now. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's all just rock, 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 and more rock. While I'm taking a break, here's what I'm looking at. It's a trip. I just saw a little small airplane go by. It was like at eye level. But there are more hikers coming up behind me. There's a big group hot on my heels, so can't rest too long. Yahoo! Woo! Trail crest. 13,800 feet. Whew. That means 700 more feet to go. But this is an amazing vantage point. Check this out. This is one of the only places where you can see into the Owens Valley. I guess that's the Owens Valley, 395. And to the west, that's Sequoia National Park. John Muir Wilderness, I think. So amazing. What a view. There's very few places that you have this kind of vantage. It's like I'm standing on this big land bridge. Okay, wow, the end is in sight. Look at that. Mount Whitney, 1.9. Less than 2 miles to go. And look, they even have a warning sign up here, so you know you're getting close. Extreme danger from lightning. To avoid being struck by lightning, immediately leave the area if any of the following conditions exist. Dark clouds, thunder, hail, hissing in the air. The Whitney shelter will not offer protection. You should leave the summit and proceed to a lower elevation. Actually, I read a really long and complicated online discussion about this Whitney shelter. It's a cabin up at the top that some people died in back in the 80s when it got hit by lightning during a storm. So the Park Service has to put these warning signs up. But I read this really, really long and technical blog post by some scientist who crunched the numbers and figured out that it's actually safer to stay in that cabin since it's been reinforced since the time of that accident. Either way, it's a moot point because the skies are perfectly blue today with not a cloud to be seen anywhere. Yahoo! I made it! Oh my god. Oh, I'll probably have Cliff Bar in my teeth because I was kind of hungry when I got up here. I'm at the top of Mount Whitney, the highest point in the continental United States. And how do you know I'm not just making this up? Well, look, there's a sign that says as much. This was the highest trail in the U.S. It was built in 1928 to 1930. It's funny to think of all those old Great Gatsby type people hiking up here. Especially like the women had to wear those long dresses. I'm guessing there wasn't that many female hikers back then. Wow, you can actually see people have been hiking up here for a long time though, because check out this dude. Put his initials in August of 1938. WT. Must stand for Wonderhussy. Anyways, let me get up and show you around Whitney Peak. Okay, here's the USGS marker proving that I'm really up here. Holy cow. Here's further proof. It's a California Division of Highways marker. Interesting. From 1967. Okay, here's a panorama starting to the west. John Muir Wilderness. Around to the south. There's Owens Lake. And to the east, Death Valley. And farther up north goes towards Mammoth. And back around, you see some more really interesting lunar landscape to the north. I mean, look at all these crazy jaggedy rock formations. I hiked up all of that, you guys. And the worst thing is, I still have to hike down. That's basically the chute that I have to hike all the way back down. Like I said, it's very lunar up here, and it's windy and it's freezing. So to that end, people have sort of built up this little rock shelter. And to be honest, I'd like nothing more than to just curl up in it and take a nap, but I want to get back down. Woo! There's one more thing up here we have to explore though, and that's this old cabin. This is the shelter they were talking about in that warning sign when they warned you to get down off the mountain if there's any sign of thunder and lightning. Oh wow, look, sorry to get distracted. Look, a squirrel. But there's an old pop tab. Look how that's probably been up here a long time, and that's pretty astonishing that it's still up here as frequently traveled as this place is. Anyway, back to this cabin. Okay, wow, this little cabin's actually really cool. There's two sides to it. Not sure why the left side is locked, but the right side's open. And in between, there's a trail register. First, let's go inside though, because I don't think there's anybody in there right now. We have it all to ourselves. This cabin is so cool. There is a little plaque down here warning you, if you can read that, about extreme danger from lightning. To avoid being struck by lightning, immediately leave the summit ridge. Again, they had to put that here because of the incident. Oh wow, it's so nice and cozy in here. Looks like somebody actually has had a fire here at some point over the years, but yeah, basically just people's names, people wanting to prove that they were here, writing their little shopping cart and Manny. Oh, it's funny. My mom told me when I was little and my little sister was born, I wanted to name her Shopping Cart. Some more warnings, liabilities. Oh, look, this guy's here from the Netherlands. And then there's just some, it's like that's like a fraternity. Oh, in memory of, that's sweet. Let's see what this is. Attention. This is an historic building. Writing on the walls is a federal crime, punishable by law under surveillance. Oh, that's hardcore, okay. Wasn't gonna write anything anyways. Oh, look at this little memento. That is so sad and so cute. It's a couple, and one of them, well, maybe one of them didn't pass away. Maybe they're just celebrating their love. I just have to make everything so depressing. And one other interesting thing in here is this wood floor. Sadly, they had to put this sign down here. Wooden floor is an integral part of lightning protection. Do not remove, because people would probably burn it to create a fire like this idiot. Oh, look in this corner. It's a little stone bench. All right, here's a pano of the whole inside of this cabin. I mean, it's small. It's like 10 feet by 10 feet, 12 by 12 maybe. But in a storm, I guess you'd be glad to have it. Lightning or no. Like I was telling you guys a little bit about this incident that happened here back, I think it was in like, oh God, 1985. I don't want to be fake news. You can look it up. But there was a group of hikers up here that got stuck in a thunderstorm. And they couldn't decide what to do, like, should they run down? Should they wait it out up here? Well, at that time, this cabin was much more rustic. So they all ran in here, and I guess they all sat on the floor with their backs to the walls. And then one guy sat in the middle of the floor right here. There wasn't enough wall space for all of them. Well, the friggin' building was directly hit by a lightning bolt. And they were all zapped, knocked unconscious. And the irony is, one of the guys in the group had already been hit by lightning once. So I guess he figured, well, I'll be safe. What are the odds? He was one of the people that died, okay? It's a terrible story. I think 2 of them died. Again, I don't want to be fake news, so look it up for yourself if you're interested. It's a fascinating story. And because of that, I think the dead hikers' parents sued the Park Service for not having appropriate signage warning you not to come in here. So that's why they have all these warning signs now, and that's why they've reinforced this thing with this wooden floor. I don't think the wood floor was here at the time of the incident. It was just dirt, right? So you just suck up all the electricity that way. So now there's a wood floor, there's metal lightning rod on the ceiling, on the roof, I'll show you. It's a little bit safer now. All right, let's go back outside. Okay, so in the middle, between the 2 doors, the little cabin shelter thingy, and then that mystery locked door, there is a trail register, and it's a doozy of a trail register. Look how big it is. But look at this, a sign too. Erected 1909, Smithsonian Institution Hodgkin's Fund. Wow. I wonder if that's who Hodgkin's lymphoma is named after. Anyway, people put all their stickers on here. Unfortunately, I forgot to bring one of my stickers, but I mean, look, it would just be lost in all these stickers. Wow. All right, so it's about 1 p.m. and I'm going to start heading down now because it's freezing up here and I'm exhausted. So I left at 3 a.m. It was actually 3 by the time I started. So that's what? 9 hours to get up here, 9.5. Oh, they say the descent is usually about 2-3 hours shorter. So let's see if I can do it in 7. Let's go. Not sure you can hear that, but it's one of those fighter jets from China Lake. You know those fighter jets that like buzz you at Saline Valley Hot Springs? It's a trip to see them from up here because, I mean, they're still way higher than you, but you're a lot closer to them. Woo! I finally made it back down to the trailhead. Oh my God, it's 7 p.m. That means it took me 16 hours to do that hike. And I am exhausted. Oh. But the good news is, because it's only 7, unlike other big hikes that I've done, I still have enough time to actually go get a really good meal before all the restaurants close. Normally when I do these long hikes, I'm so tired and the hour is so late that there's nothing open and I end up eating some crap. But this time will be different. Weirdly, I wasn't really that hungry by the time I got back down into town. But my appetite returned in time for me to have a huge breakfast the next morning. Okay, it's time for a quick recap of my Mount Whitney hike. First off, I totally underestimated Mount Whitney. I did not expect it to take 9.5 hours to summit. Now granted, my pace was handicapped by a few factors. I was sick with a cold, I was high as a kite, and I was hiking with a friend who didn't do the necessary training and slowed me down somewhat. Without these complications, I could have shaved maybe an hour off my ascent time, but when I read these accounts online of people making the ascent in 5 hours, it blows my mind. I consider myself to be pretty fit with pretty good stamina, but I don't think I could make it from the trailhead to the top in 5 hours. That being said, I finished the hike relatively unscathed. I did some light stretching the evening after the hike, and weirdly, I never did get sore at all. Not even a bit. Not my calves, not my hip flexors, not my shoulders. It was really weird. Throughout the whole experience, I didn't take so much as a single ibuprofen, nor did I get as much as a single blister. So I guess I shouldn't complain about it taking me so long. I guess I did something right. I didn't even get sunburned. I mean, realistically, the only thing exposed was my face, and I always wear face lotion with sunblock in it, but I saw a lot of people coming down the trail with sunburned noses. I ended up drinking about 1.5 liters of water over the course of the hike and eating 2 Cliff Bars, a small bag of beef jerky, and a handful of trail mix. I didn't end up needing to use my wag bag, thankfully, but I did have to pee probably 10 times along the way, which goes to show that I wasn't dehydrated despite only drinking 1.5 liters of water. Which, by the way, is way below the recommended intake, and I don't recommend it. I just know my own body, and I've lived in the desert for almost 20 years, and I think I'm becoming part camel. Anyway, I probably would do this hike again. It was so beautiful. But would I do it as a day hike, or would I do it as an overnight backpacking trip? Backpacking would be cool. As we saw, there's all kind of cool places to camp along the trail, and it would give you more time to explore all the lakes, streams, and waterfalls along the way. But on the other hand, I'd really hate to lug a heavy pack even halfway up that trail. And if I did do it again, I'd probably be curious to see how much faster I could summit, assuming I was in good health and in faster company. Either way, if I did do it again, I'd probably wear pretty much the same clothes, as what I wore turned out to be just the right amount of coverage. I had to strip down to my thermal base layer for a little bit of the ascent, but other than that, I wore my hoodie and/or my shell the rest of the hike because of the wind. My gloves were also crucial, and having a hat and sunglasses was critical because of the bright glare of the sun at that altitude. And probably the most critical element for me was downloading all those podcasts before the hike. They kept me awake, alert, and engaged so that I didn't doze off and roll an ankle. I mean, hiking for 16 hours gets monotonous, no matter how beautiful and majestic the scenery is. I would also try and make any future attempts at the same time of year. Mid-September was absolutely perfect. It wasn't too cold, there was virtually zero snow or ice on the trail, and best of all, there wasn't a cloud in the sky, meaning I didn't have to worry about getting struck by lightning. But there's also a few things I would do differently. First, and most importantly, I would go to bed much earlier the night before. We didn't go to bed until 10 p.m., leaving only 4 hours to sleep, which, as we saw, didn't go so well for me. On a future attempt, I would go to bed at a ridiculously early hour, like 6 or 7 p.m. That way, I could take my sleep medicine without having to worry about it kicking in partway through the hike. Second, I would carry much less food. I found that I didn't have much appetite while I was hiking, probably due to the elevation, but I was carrying probably 2 to 3 pounds worth of food. If I did it again, I would just carry those energy gels like marathon runners use, plenty of vitamins, easy to get down my gullet, and they don't weigh very much. I'd probably still bring 2 liters of water and my filtration straw just in case. I didn't end up drinking all of my water this time, but that's not to say conditions might be different on my next attempt, and it's always better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. Third, I'd probably study the route a little bit better. As it was, I really had no idea as I was chugging along how far I'd gone or where I was in relation to the total distance. The only clue I had was my altimeter app, whereby I could at least figure out what elevation I had achieved and sort of gauge my progress by that. But then again, going along blindly might have been a bonus. If I knew I'd only gone a third of the way, for instance, it might have just been disheartening. Stumbling along blindly might have been a plus. And speaking of stumbling along blindly, I probably wouldn't leave quite as early. I'd leave at maybe 4 a.m. so I didn't have to hike in the darkness as long. Hiking in the dark was an interesting experience, but you really can't see any of the scenery, and it was a little bit boring. Knowing the trail now and knowing my proficiency, I would feel comfortable leaving at 4 a.m., having plenty of daylight to get back down to my car. And finally, I'm not sure I would eat a cookie the night before this hike. Sure, if I'd gone to bed earlier, it might not have been an issue, but with edibles, you never really know. Sometimes they metabolize later than you expect, and then you end up like me, hiking along in pitch darkness, high as a kite. At the very least, I would be sure to download the entire Dark Side of the Moon album, just in case.